Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to do a 32-month update on the Sea Reefer 250. I'm going to tell you about the joys and pains of re-aquascaping your reef. Welcome back everyone. This is what my tank looked like a couple of months ago, and I wasn't happy with that right border. It was a little bit too big, and the turret that was on top, I felt like it was getting too much light. So I know I debated a little bit about removing it, and last month that's exactly what I did. So I just decided to remove this entire boulder, remove all the colonies that were on it, and then re-aquascape using a couple of pieces of carob sea live rock. They call it live rock, but it's dead rock, dry rock that I picked up. Okay, first and foremost, I'll tell you that this was a big pain in the butt. It took me pretty much the entire day, maybe starting from 11 until 10 p.m. And we're gonna speed up the process a little bit. I wasn't fully prepared. I ran out of glue. I had to go twice to get different containers of glue. But basically, I just took this entire boulder and I put it in this 30-gallon brute that had salt water heated up to the right temperature. And then the plan was to kind of remove the 3 acropora colonies that were on this. I started the job using a little hacksaw. It looks like I'm a little bit precarious here and I'm about to cut my hand, but trust me that during the whole time I took my time. I made sure that I wasn't doing anything stupid, and it seems like I was doing dangerous things, but my hand was away from the saw and I was doing everything in a controlled manner. But the first step was, I never did this before, so I had no idea how to do it. But I thought that if I just kind of score around the colonies, then I could go with like a screwdriver or anything that had like a flat edge and kind of exert some leverage to pop off the colonies. So that's what I did. Where I'm going to show you the whole process kind of sped up. So first, I kind of scored around a little bit of the turret that was on top. Then I scored around the green slimer, which you see me doing here. The trickiest part in all of this was to kind of hold the colony stable, because obviously you don't want to have it drop and break all your acropora. So it was a little bit tricky to kind of get in the right place. But after I scored around the slimer, I was able to use my bone cutters and just gently break the tissue underneath the colony. And eventually I was able to just pop the whole colony off with minimal damage. Actually, this colony, yeah, there it is. It looked like it got beaten up a little bit, but actually it was in pretty good shape. So the slimer is off. The next thing was to remove my Aura Blue Voodoo, and again I started scoring around it with the hacksaw, just making sure that I have something to grab on with my bone cutters or my screwdriver. And you could see here that when I actually managed to get it off, but it came in 2 pieces, so I broke the aura in half essentially, and that was a little bit annoying. I tried to get it in 1 piece, but it didn't look that bad. It came out cleanly in 2 pieces, and then a little bit of the Miyagi turret came out really nicely. So after all of the small colonies were out of the way, now it was time to remove the big Miyagi turret. And here I actually tried to kind of cut completely around. I used a couple of types of hacksaws, and so this is a big Stanley hacksaw. But actually, I went back to the smaller one. I found that the small little black hacksaw that I got from Home Depot worked really well, and it actually worked better in the water. So having kind of sawing the rock when it was wet was a little bit easier. I managed to kind of make it through halfway, but eventually so this is Buchanan rock, and it's actually pretty porous. Eventually I managed to cut my way all the way to the original frag plug, and then I encountered a lot of resistance. So I thought that I would just kind of go around the frag plug and then again use my bone cutters and hopefully the whole colony will come out. And actually it didn't take much work. The whole colony did come off. So really happy with how the colonies came out. My biggest problem was actually putting the colonies back on the new aquascape, and that's where most of the damage happened. So I actually managed to break a big chunk of big chunks out of my Miyagi Tort. You see what the new aquascape looks like now. Overall, I'm happy with it. It was a lot of work. I was not mentally prepared to for all the work and all the stress. I thought it was an easy job, but it literally took like a good 12 hours. But I'm happy with the aquascape. I think I like this tiered look where I have now shelves at different heights. The view from the side looks pretty good. You see here the two carp sea rocks that I got. They have some nice holes for fish to go through. And right away, as soon as I changed my aquascape, I did notice that fish were essentially hanging around that corner of the tank. Before, it was just one big oppressive boulder that stuck out. But now there's like more third dimensionality, if you know what I mean, right? Like it's you get a progression of heights going from the lowest shelf, smaller shelf where the ice fire is, a third shelf, and then the top shelf where we have the tort. So I'm glad that I did it. I just if you're planning to kind of do this re-aquascape, make sure you have everything prepared in hand. Make sure you have extra glue. Make sure you have extra putty, and just be prepared that it's going to take a little bit more time. Putting the rocks on was actually more involved putting the acros on the new rock took more time than removing them from the old rock. Okay, so there was overall I would say that their aquascaping had no major impact on the tank, with a couple of exceptions, 3 exceptions. My Aura Blue Voodoo did show signs of stress and STN, slow tissue necrosis. So ever since I did the re-aquascape, it's been kind of slowly dying from the base up. I've been keeping on top of it by removing bits of tissue whenever I can. You could see here that I had to kind of glue it and re-glue it. I think I'm just going to end up losing this colony. It's just the slow tissue necrosis is proceeding, and it doesn't seem that refragging it is doing anything. I think perhaps maybe that it was either the shock from all the manhandling, or the fact that it spent like a lot of time outside of the tank, or maybe that the new location is receiving less light than the old location. So I don't really know what's happening, but it's not happy. The other problem that I've been noticing, again, that it coincided with the re-aquascape, is my Rainbow Monty. You could see it's looking really awful. It's losing a lot of tissue, and I think this colony, I'm essentially giving up on this colony. I don't think it's going to recover. I'm also having some slow tissue necrosis on my Pink Mystic Montipora. I'll show you here in a sec. There it is. You see some of the white dead tissue around the base here, and a couple of white spots there. So I don't know what's happening. I don't know whether it was just the fact that the display tank, I had to shut off the circulation for a good maybe like hour or so while I was getting things in and out. So maybe that did it. Maybe I used too much glue or too much putty all at once. Maybe it was just a change in the biofilter, right? Because I did take out about a big boulder, a third of the live rock that was in the tank. I removed, like all of a sudden, and maybe that kind of caused some kind of imbalance. And on the levels, the nutrient levels have stayed the same. There's been no big change in the core parameters, but maybe something else I'm not measuring that was a byproduct of all of these extra biofiltration that I had in the rocks just kind of disappeared, and that's what shocked the system. Maybe there was some chemicals on the carp sea rock that I used. So I really don't know, but definitely all of the declines in these 3 specific corals coincided with the re-aquascape. I think I'm just going to have to take my losses at that point. It took too long, and when I did that re-aquascape, I was kind of fully prepared to wake up to a tank full of dead corals. So in that one sense, given how dramatic and traumatic the experience was for me, I thought that I just ruined the tank because it took so long. and I was kind of making mistakes. It was like a tragedy of errors, but I'm happy overall. I'm gonna take my losses. 3 colonies are not a big deal. I'm glad that the Maju tortoise survived, and nothing else drastic happened. I am generally happy with the new look of the aquascape. One of the pleasant surprises was that this is the point of view of my tank when I'm having dinner or coffee in the morning, and the old aquascape was really oppressive. You couldn't see through the tank. You just got this big rock boulder. But now you could see that you could see through the tank a lot nicer, a lot easier, and you could see the different corals from the side view. So it's a much more enjoyable view. All right, time for the mandatory top-down tour. The tenuous is looking really good. The birds of paradise, from the top it looks great, and the colony is doing well. But if the bottom of it, I think the canopy is getting really big, that it's shading the bottom, and the bottom is kind of dead. I know this is a common problems with birds' nests. I think I might just take this whole thing off and remove the dead tissue and kind of make it small again. But that's just something that I think I'll have to constantly deal with, because it does, as the colony grows, it does shade the bottom and you get some tissue loss. The Christmas Montipora, Season's Greeting Montipora is doing great. Top shelf, we have the blueberry wine, looking really beautiful. The bird, what is this? Red Planet is doing really great. And new pink lemonade frag. It's a little bit pale. It's alive. It's encrusting. It's a little bit pale, so I'll just give it some time. Then here we have the pink Cadillac, looking nice and mean. Look at the colors here. They're really pretty. Behind that is the bonsai, looking super. The Cali Tort, lovely intense coloration. The Red Planet is doing really good. The Orange Passion is doing really good. What I've been doing with the Orange Passion is I'm trying this idea of microfragging. And so let me zoom in a little bit. So I actually cut like one big frag, it was like I cut a 1-inch frag, broke it into 3 different pieces, and I glued them beside the colony. So you see one up here and 2 down there. And the idea of microfragging is that, if you cut tiny little frags and you glue them, then they're going to grow faster than if I were to transplant just one single large frag. At least that's what will happen in theory. I'll see how it works out. But essentially the idea is that I like that Orange Passion so much. I want it to grow more, so I'm kind of seeding the colony. So to create another colony that hopefully the 2 will fuse and create a much larger colony. The Shockaholic, looking really nice. Then down at the boiler here, this is the Pac-Man, getting really big. I have to frag it soon. The bottom shelf here, we have 3 new frags. Major Laser, can I expose it a little bit? It's looking really nice. Green, nice bright green body with the red tips. Red polyps. The Ice Fire, touch wood, it's still growing and looking pretty colorful. It's encrusting, so I'm really happy. This is the longest that I've had an Ice Fire, so maybe 3 times as a charm. The Fox Flame, it's still looking pretty pale, but it's encrusting, so I'm just gonna live with it. Then here is the new aquascape. So on the bottom here you have the Aura Blue Voodoo, which I think is on its way out. The green Slimer, you could kind of see it on the bottom here, looking really nice. And then I did the aquascape because I think this colony hopefully will color up to its normal electric self. you could see that obviously I caused a lot of damage to this colony. I dropped it a couple of times when I was aquascaping, so it lost a lot of branches. So it hasn't colored up yet, although I'm seeing flashes of electricity coming back. So I think my hypothesis is correct in that this colony does better under low light. I mean, it's not as electric as it was when the tank was like a year old, but I think the colors are going to come back. Yeah. So that's kind of view looking across. I'm fairly happy with the changes. There's a few corals that then some of the new additions that need to color up, like the pink lemonade, which looks pretty pale. If you look at it right now, it looks pretty pale. But I still see polyp extension. I see some like hints of fluorescence. So I'll give it a couple of months and see what it does. If it doesn't improve, then I might put it somewhere lower. But I think I'm gonna just keep it up here for now. This is my magnesium levels over the past year, and just ignore this last little bit. Um, Starting from like about last March, I've just been on a slow kind of gradual decline in magnesium, and I've been testing, once a month, once every 2 weeks, and the levels have been going lower. And as a result, I've been ramping up my dosing of the ESV magnesium, and it didn't seem like I'm able to kind of keep up until like I think about December, where I've started dosing I think maybe like 30 mils of the ESV magnesium, and then early this month, I ran out of my magnesium test kit, and I bought a new test kit, and I tested my magnesium, and it was like off the charts. It was bigger than the value that you could estimate. So I ran out of the reagents in the syringe. So that means it was like north of 1500 ppm. I double checked this with a neighbor of mine's magnesium test kit, and we confirmed that it's really, really high. And I've tested it again, and it's really high. So I think what was happening is that my tank wasn't really, over the past year, my tank wasn't really using up that much magnesium, but my test kit, which was a sulfate, was somehow losing its potency. So I think maybe over time, my test kit was losing its potency, making me believe that my magnesium was declining, but in reality, my magnesium was high. So I kept dosing, and the real magnesium levels went higher up than what I wanted them to be, but my test kits kept showing that I needed more and more. So this actually had happened to me before with magnesium, with a Red Sea testing kit. So when I first started reefing, I used the Red Sea kit, and I had the same issue. I switched to sulfate, and I had some good success. I mean, the sulfate kits are a lot easier to read than the Red Sea in terms of the magnesium. But just word of caution, I don't know whether the magnesium reagents in the sulfate kit are very sensitive. So once you open them, you really have to use them. As you can see here, I don't really test that often. I test maybe once every few weeks, so once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. But what I'm learning from here is that perhaps I need to either find a better test kit that will give kind of consistent results over time, or maybe I just need to kind of, whenever I open a bottle, I need to use it up quickly. So I should test magnesium more often. So anyway, just a word of caution: if you're ever noticing that your magnesium, you can't keep your magnesium levels at the levels you want, and you have to keep dosing more and more and more, then possibly your test kit is off, and it's not a problem with your tank consuming too much magnesium. It's just a problem with the kit. So keep that in mind. And just before we go, I wanted to give you an update on my wrasse QT. So if you saw my last video, I've been QTing 2 wrasses in a quarantine tank in my basement. And right after I finished shooting that video, right now they're in copper. And right after, I noticed that the pintail wrasse was acting a little bit weird. He looked really jerky, and he was doing this movement with his head. It looked like he was like chewing his food, but he was doing it without any food being in the tank. So he just kind of kept moving his mouth. And I took the fish out. I took both fish out, and I did a freshwater dip. So you essentially have a container of water, large volume that's heavily aerated, fresh water matching the temperature of the quarantine tank, and then you dunk the fish in for 5 minutes. And the fish looks awful. It looks like it's gonna die, but it's usually fine. And for the carpenter wrasse, nothing came up. But for the pintail wrasse, you could really see all of these opaque sesame seed-like flukes coming out of his body and his gills. He had a really heavy infestation. So normally I don't like to kind of mix medications, but I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that you can mix General Cure, which contains Protsy, which is effective against flukes, with copper safe, provided that there's a lot of aeration in the tank. So I did dose General Cure, and the pintailed wrasse that you're looking at right now, he looked really bad after the freshwater dip, but today he's looking really healthy. Both fish look really healthy. So this is the first time that I've actually confirmed flukes on a fish. I've done many freshwater dips before and never came up with something, but this time it was really obvious that the fish had flukes. So that was the update, guys. And again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm an expert on quarantining wrasses. It's just I've quarantined like maybe 10 or 12 fish before, and I'm just sharing what I've done in the past, but I'm obviously still learning about these things. So if you do have any questions, you're welcome to ask me, but the best place to shoot your questions is Reef to Reef, their disease forums. There are many more knowledgeable people that have quarantined hundreds of fish, and I draw upon their experience whenever I have questions. All right, so hopefully we'll see these guys in display tank in the next update. And for now, thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and see you next month.